Hey Trailblazers, welcome back to SFDC Quest. In this video, we'll see how exactly we can call an Apex class from our prompt template in Agentforce. So why do we need an Apex class in our prompt template? At times, we cannot basically use all the out-of-the-box features to basically get the data that we need as a part of our prompt template. We need some data that we need to ground, and that data might be relationship. It might have a complex relationship. It might have some dependency on other records. And what we can do is we can leverage Apex at that point of time in case if there is some logic that you want to perform while returning the data as a grounding factor, your template, that is where you can use your Apex class to get the data from the database and use it in your prompt template as a grounding. Without any delay, let's get started. So I'm switching back to Salesforce org real quick. I'm on my Salesforce org in the setup menu. So I look for prompt template. In case if you haven't looked at how exactly you can create a prompt template, feel free to check out the other video in the eye icon. So once you start looking for prompt builder, that is where you would be finding it under Einstein Generative AI. So click on this link and you will be landing onto this page. So as a part of this demo, I'll be creating a new prompt template and I'll be using the prompt template type as flex. You can use other options depending on what is your use case. And I'll name this as order demo YouTube. And here is the thing that we need to notice. The details that it is asking is first the prompt template name and the API name, description. It is a good practice to fill out the description in terms of why you are using this prompt template. And here is a section where it talks about providing the inputs to your prompt template. Now, in order for us to use an Apex class in our prompt template, we have to provide some input at times. If there are no inputs, you don't have to configure this section. You can click on next and go forward. In case if your Apex class or your prompt template needs some input, go ahead and create a variable in here. So you have to provide a name, API name, and you have to decide whether it is an object or a free text or a DMO object. So for now, we don't know all these things. We'll come back to this section in some time from now. So once we have our Apex class setup, that is where we can configure this accurately. In order for us to go forward on this one, I'll quickly go ahead and switch to the developer console in here. So I have an Apex class created. I'll just quickly walk you through what exactly it would do. And then we'll see how to call this Apex class, which goes by name order demo controller from our flex template that we have, that we are going to set up in here. All right. So my intention here is there should be a call from a prompt template to this Apex class where it takes an ID of an order. And once it takes an ID of an order, it should basically call this method and return the status of that order. Yes, you can do this pretty much using your out of the box feature using your object. This class is mainly intended to walk you through the process of how to call an Apex class from your prompt template. Now let's go ahead and understand this process with a simple example. Like I've said, this can be done directly with your object option in the order itself, but we are just making this little easier for us to understand. We are taking this example to make our life easy in terms of the process. Now I've created a class called order demo controller. In order to take an input, I've created a class. And this class basically has a member called order ID. Now why we are doing this one is any request that is coming from your prompt template would be taken in as a list view, will be taken as a list. And in that list, you can add members. So for that reason, I've created a class in here and I've exposed the attribute that I want to set as a, or I've exposed the member of a class, which is this variable as invocable variable. What happens when we do this one? When we do this one, it basically exposes this variable to the place where it has been called, or to place where it is going to be set. In our case, it is prompt template. In simpler terms, if you write this invocable variable, this is where Salesforce would be able to understand that, yes, I need to send the value to this particular variable. This is exposed. In other way, this variable is exposed for input and output. Similarly, if I scroll down, I have created another response in here. In a second from now, you'll understand why we are doing this one. Again, I've created a variable called prompt here, and I've marked it as invocable variable. Again, this variable is exposed for input and output for Salesforce to do the transaction. In simpler terms. Now, where are these two inner classes being used? So if you see this method which goes by order method demo, and I have exposed it as invocable method, that means once you write this method, Salesforce would be able to directly call this method. All right. So if you remove this one, the way to call this method is you have to write the class name dot method name to call this one if it is a static method. If it is a not static method, you would write class name is equals new class name and then call this method. Since we cannot directly do that options in your prompt template, that is why we are exposing it as invocable method. Now, it takes a parameter which is list of order creation request, which is this one. Inside that order creation request class, what we have a variable called order ID. That means in this list of requests that we are getting, we have this variable being set. So from where it has been done, it has been done from your prompt template. All right, so this is the input to the method that we are calling. Now inside this method, what I'm doing, I'm creating a list of response. Why are doing it here? The way to return this value back to the prompt is via list. So we are just creating a wrapper class which has a variable called prompt. So our job is to set this prompt variable and then add this class to the list and then return that value. That is what we are doing here. If you see this, this is a list that I've created for this response. And in order to fill that list, I'm creating a variable of that class and querying the order with the order ID. So the way I'm doing it here is, since I have the request that is coming in, I know that only one variable will be set in that list, or one entry in the list would be set. I'm setting it to 0.order ID. It is simple Apex concept that we know. It is not a best practice, but I'm just hard coding it for our understanding. So once I have the order, I'm just updating the prompt saying order status is o.status, which is this one, and then result.add, and I'm returning that result. So basically we are adding this response to this response class and then adding it to the list and returning it, because that is our return type in here. All right, so this is what we have in our Apex class. Now the question here is, how can I pass this order ID from prompt template to the Apex class? That is question number one. And second question is there a way to call this Apex class directly from my prompt template? Is there anything else that I need to know? All right. So to answer these two questions, let's switch back to our Flex template that we have. So now let's start doing the other part. Now remember, we talked about input variables that are optional. In our case, we want to call an Apex class which takes an input of order creation request of type list. That means I need to pass this input to my Apex class. So in order to do that, first what we need to do is we need to take the variable in here, copy it and paste it in here. Since it is an ID, I'm selecting it as free text in here. If it is an object that you are passing it as a parameter to your Apex class, select it as object. If it is the DMO, select it according to your input that has been configured in your Apex. You might be wondering, why are we not configuring this request as an input in here? If you see here, this is just a holding value for our variable. So actually the variable value has been set in here. It is not the class or the class variable list variable that we are setting in here. This is the value that holds the information that is passed from your prompt template to your Apex class. So hence I'm just setting this value in here. So this is point number 1 to be noted, saying that whatever the value that you have written as your input variable, which is the class that the wrapper class that you have, the variable inside it, that is what you need to configure. If you have n number of variables, or make sure that you optimize it. The limit that we have here is 5. And you can make sure that if it is a number of objects that you want to pass, make sure that you're creating it as an S object and select the object in here rather than just input variables here. All right. So that is how you can optimize it. So that way you can make the best out of it in terms of the limit that we have. So once done, click on next in here. Now comes the point where we need to write our prompt. So I'm just making this prompt little simple, saying order status is. Here is the place where I want to call that Apex class and set the value that has been returned from there. All right. Now, so how can I call that Apex class from here? You see this option called insert resource. If you click on that one, that is where you have an option to basically use this options. You can call a flow, you call an Apex, you can do an Einstein search, and you can do couple of options saying what is the current organization values that you have, current user, and free text. Free text is nothing but the variable that we have configured in the input. If you want to use it anywhere in the prompt template, you can directly access the free text values from here. Now, our main intention is to call an Apex class, so I'll go ahead and check this Apex option. So if you see here, there are multiple Apex classes that are being listed out here. Now, our Apex class goes by the name order demo controller. All right. Now, if I look for order demo controller, so I don't have the exact class coming up here. So it says order demo controller v1, but my class is order demo controller. All right. So this is challenge number 1. Most of you might face this error where you might not see your Apex class listed down here. What are the things that you need to know before you debug this one? The first and foremost thing that you need to understand is if you do not mention your input attributes as invocable variables and your method as invocable method, your class would not be listed down here. But in our case, we have successfully updated the variables as invocable variables and the method as invocable method, which is good. The second most important point that you need to make sure is the return type of your Apex class should always have the response as prompt. All right, so this is constant always. You cannot have something different in here. The variable of your output should always be prompt. It cannot be prompt 1, prompt 2, anything apart from prompt. So this is point number 2. Check for this information where it should be a string prompt. And third most important thing is the variable type that you have mentioned in here. So since order is an ID, I've made it as ID. And if you go back to your prompt template, you would not be able to see that class in here. Whereas if you see in this example, I'm able to see this order demo controller v1. If I go back to this controller, it is the exact same, no difference in the code. all I did was I've made that id to string, id to string. So hence I'm able to see that v1 class in here. And fourth most important thing is your variable name, whatever that you have updated here, should be exactly same as the input that you have defined while configuring your template. So these are the four things that you need to keep in mind, where it should have the invocable variables, and the prompt, the return type of your Apex class should be in prompt of string. The third thing is it should be of type string. Your input variable should be of type string. So these are the things you need to keep in mind, so that way your Apex class would be listed down here. So let's quickly do some tests in here. So since I've just mentioned it here, I'll just save this template for our testing purpose, so that way we can refresh it and see the latest update. So as of now, we have this option called Apex, and we see a order demo controller v1. So in this controller, what I'll make changes, I'll just make sure this prompt has been updated as prompt1, just to see if everything is as per our discussion. All right, so it might throw an error. Let's just update this one, part2. Right, so the return variable that I've configured, I've just updated as prompt1. I'll go in here to the flex template, refresh it, click on insert resource. So this is the same template that we were using. Go to Apex class, and if you see here, as soon as I made that change, my Apex class is not being listed down here. So what is the issue here? The return type has been updated as a different variable name apart from prompt. So if I just revert back that change and do a refresh in here, I'll quickly able to see my Apex class listed down again in here. So this is regarding the second point that we have discussed. The prompt cannot be a different variable when you're sending it back to your prompt template. So this name should be always prompt. Now let's see, we have also seen what would happen if I do an ID instead of string here. So the input variable mismatch has happened. We have configured it as a free text in here, and we are just mentioning the type of my variable as ID in here as an input mismatch. So hence my class is not been listed. So let's quickly correct that. Let's quickly change it to string. Save it. And this time my order demo controller should be coming up because I've updated my variable type to string in here. So if I go ahead and do a refresh, this would be so frustrating to understand why it is not coming up. Feel free to follow this pointer, so that way you know your class has been listed down here. So if you see here, this time our order demo controller is showing up because the variable mismatch has been sorted. Now, last but not the least, let's do one thing. Let's remove this invocable method and save this class. So our class has been saved without any errors. So if I do a refresh again in here, let's see the behavior of our Apex class. So again, if you see here, our Apex class has been missing. The reason being we have not made that method as invocable, and you can do the same for your variables as well to see what is the behavior of your class. Now, as soon as I do that, invocable method do not support parameter of type list because we have marked this invocable method, but this variable is not been supported. So we don't have to go to the prompt to see this behavior. Apex class itself is stopping us from saving this class. As soon as I revert this change, I'm able to save the class. And if I refresh this template, I should be seeing my Apex class back in the list. Now, what is our intention here? Our intention is to call an Apex class from our prompt template. We are able to do that. Now let's save this one. And I really should have created prompt so that way it is more usable. but our idea here is to understand the flow. So that is why we are just making things simple here. To see the preview, what I'll do, I'll click on preview button in here. By providing an input here. So in order to get a order ID, I'll go and look for orders. So that way I can quickly get an ID of an order. So that way I can pass it as a parameter here. I'll pick one order ID in here. Copy the ID from here. What is the status of my order? It is in draft status. So I'll provide the ID in here. So thing to notice here is, so this is the variable that we're exposing. It is enclosed in a wrapper class, or it is enclosed in an inner class. And that inner class is basically being used as a list here. Do not get confused in case if you're seeing it as a list. This is the way it would basically work for the bulkification factor. Once done, click on preview. So we have got the value as draft, and this is the generated response. All right, so this is how you can basically utilize the power of Apex in your template, and we would do it once you, in case if you need some complex computation to present the data, or you want some kind of a correlation between the records and you want very specific fields to be looked at with some filtering or with some logic applied. That is where you would use your Apex to ground the data. So that way your logic sits in your controller, and the Apex and the prompt template basically does the process of generating your content. So once done, you can activate your template and start using it. So that brings us to the end of this video, where we have gone through the process of calling your Apex class in your prompt template and using it as a merge fields. That is all for today. Thanks for joining. Happy learning to you.